Now, a near end does not seem on the horizon for the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, and this as Israel says it is still preparing for its ground invasion into Gaza. While world leaders are discussing and negotiating over the conflict, a consensus does not appear to be workable so far. Meanwhile, the human suffering continues, and in the latest, IDF says ground forces backed by fighter jets and drones carried out a nighttime targeted raid in central Gaza as it prepares for a land invasion. As part of the activity, IDF aircraft and artillery struck terror targets belonging to the Hamas in the enclave. Israel Defense Forces also say that they have killed 3 Hamas militants who were struck by their fighter jets, and these militants played a significant role in the invasion and murderous attack against Israel on October 7th, as per the IDF, and they're considered to be the most significant brigade of Hamas. Now, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry claims more than 7,000 Palestinians have been killed so far in the war, and the ministry's toll includes more than 2,700 minors and at least 1,500 women. Hamas has also released the names of those who have been killed. Speaking of the expected ground offensive, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that it's not far off. He also added that Israel will carry out the operation when the conditions are right in order to strike Hamas. Gallant also talked about tensions with Hezbollah on the border with Lebanon. He said Israel has no interest in expanding the war.
מלחמה בחזית הדרומית כנגד חמאס. אנחנו מוכנים לכל התפתחות בצפון. חיזבאללה סופג נפגעים רבים. יחד עם זה, אין לנו עניין להרחיב את המלחמה. היעד שלנו הוא ניצחון במלחמה והחזרתם של החטופים. התמרון יגיע ולא ירחק היום והוא יקרה. זה יקרה כאשר ייווצרו התנאים המתאימים על מנת להכות את ארגון החמאס, ולאחר שנשלים את משימתנו באש, כאשר הדבר הזה יקרה, אתם תראו אותו ותבינו את עוצמתו.
And while the defense minister said that Israel did conduct a military drill close to its border with Lebanon on Thursday, clashes with Iran-backed Hezbollah group have been frequent since the Israel-Hamas war broke out. More than 40 Hezbollah militants have been killed in the borderland so far, and while Israel's military says at least 7 of its soldiers have been killed. And as Israeli strikes continue on Gaza, Libya's parliament has called for heating oil exports to those who back Israel. The parliament demands that Israeli aggression must stop, else the country must move forward with the decision. Meanwhile, aid agencies have accused Israel of using starvation as a weapon of war, as sufficient aid is not entering Gaza. Organization Oxfam says only 2% of the usual supplies of food had been delivered to Gaza since the border was closed at the beginning of the crisis. UN also says that far fewer supplies have arrived in the past week in Gaza than would normally be delivered. Now, Hamas has meanwhile said at least 50 hostages held by the group have been killed so far, and group's armed wing says that these hostages have been killed in the continued Israeli strikes in Gaza. Speaking of hostages, a senior Qatari negotiator told in an interview that civilians being held hostages by Hamas in Gaza could be released within days. He cautioned, however, that any escalation in the conflict could jeopardize those efforts. Diplomacy and negotiations around the war continue, and now a senior Hamas delegation has traveled to Moscow to meet Russian foreign ministry officials. This is the organization's first high-profile international visit since its October 7th attack on Israel. Iranian deputy foreign minister is in Moscow as well, and the 3 leaders held a trilateral meet as per a picture posted by Hamas. EU leaders also met in Brussels on Thursday to discuss the situation in West Asia. In a declaration agreed at a summit, the leaders expressed the gravest concern for the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza. They called for pauses in the fighting so that humanitarian aid could enter Gaza, and debate on the war also continue at the United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly held an emergency meeting on Thursday to discuss the dire situation. Representatives from Israel and Arab countries exchanged sharp accusations at the discussion in UNGA, showing no signs of consensus. Iran's foreign minister, in a sharp remark at UN, warned that US will not be spared from the fire if war in Gaza continues. And now the US military has struck 2 facilities in eastern Syria used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated groups. Pentagon also says that about 900 additional U.S. troops are heading to West Asia to protect U.S. personnel amid a surge in attacks in the region by Iran-affiliated groups. U.S. troops have been attacked at least 12 times in Iraq and 4 times in Syria in the past week. Pentagon said that U.S. forces were targeted earlier on Thursday in Iraq as well, but the attack failed. Now, at least 24 American military personnel have been wounded in these attacks.
Team leaders definitely got to go first, and the team leaders out here on the line, even though they were tired, they just saw through.
Now, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani sends us the latest updates on U.S. troop deployments in West Asia. Take a look.
Pentagon officials are saying some 900 U.S. troops have been deployed to the Middle East region. These were troops that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin talked about a few weeks ago. They were on prepare to deploy orders. However, it's not clear what part of the region they've been deployed to. Pentagon officials said on Thursday that they have not been deployed to Israel. Now, this deployment comes as the Hamas and Israel war rages on, but then the likelihood of this war spilling over to other parts of the region have now become very real as well.